בעזרת השם. Okay, Shalom Aleichem to everyone. We have Meira and Aryeh here in person. And whoever's joining us online, and my mother, of course, watches every week, and everyone else, Vital and David, everyone that watches. Shalom Aleichem. So we are now in apparently post-war. War is over, at least according to Donald Trump. And of course the war is not over, because as long as the Iranian regime wants to kill all the Jews, so still a lot of work to do as far as they're concerned. I'm really hoping that the Mossad and the IDF planted whatever they needed to in Iran, hacked into as many computer systems, tapped every phone line, I don't know, have new spies, have all kinds of surprises waiting, new bases and who knows what for the next round, because there's going to be a next round eventually. Just like in Gaza, it's quite amazing. So now Iran has become Gaza. Gaza, we would have a war, and then 3 years later have another war, and then 2 years later have another war, and then we got October 7th. So Be'ezat Hashem, she hear good news. Of course, everybody that's here in Israel didn't get very much sleep last night or most of the night. We're very lucky in Jerusalem. I don't think, there's Yael. Shalom Aleichem. We're very lucky in Jerusalem. I don't think there was one missile that landed in Jerusalem. Right, Beersheba, Haifa, Tel Aviv, Rehovot. My daughter and her family are in Rehovot, and the missile wasn't far from where they live. They thought it hit their building. Crazy stuff. So, what can I say? She heard good news, Bezat Hashem. And we continue from where we left off. So we're in lesson I Bet 72. We're now on part 2 Bet. And because I'm tired, just like everyone else, we're just going to do Bet, which is a small section, but we're going to read the footnotes. And then I have a little story of Reb Shmuel Munkis. So, however you want to figure it out, but exactly what I'm reading is there, it's also marked. Yevaer madua tzarich la'amit shuv et Yetzer. He's going to explain, there's Katie, Shalom Aleichem. He's going to explain why we have to kill the Yetzer again. So what does that mean? He said, Rabbi Nachman said before, that when a person has thoughts of doing tshuva, they immediately kill the Yetzer, which makes sense because the second that you have thoughts of doing tshuva, then the Yetzer is no longer resisting you. So the fact that you had the thought of doing tshuva is what killed the Yetzer, but then the Yetzer is going to come back. And we see this all the time. You want to give tzedakah, you tell somebody, I'm going to give you 500 shekels. By the time it actually gets out of your hand, it's 50 shekels. Because he said, I can't give him 500 shekels, and you find every justification, and the whole thing goes on and on. So that's what happens. And so the Yetzer comes back, and we have to kill it again. After we killed the Yetzer. There's lots of divisions amongst, there's like lots of different parts of the Yetzer. Ben anashim gedolim lektanim, whether they're people that are big spiritually or on the lower level spiritually. Ukamoken ba'adam ba'atzmo, and so it is every person within themselves. Ben zman shaya katan leben zman shegadan b'malam. Whether the person was young or older, whether they were on a lower spiritual level or grew to a higher spiritual place. Ki yesh kama b'chinot b'Yetzer. There are several attributes of the Yetzer. Ki yesh b'nei adam nimuchim megumashim. There are corporeal is the word that's used for megusham, but it means like very physical. There are some people that are just very low and very into the physical world. They're not don't have a great deal of da'at, of awareness of Hashem's presence. She'ayetzara shenahem ugam ken yetzara namuch umegusham, and their yetzara is also a yetzara that's on a very low level, right? If somebody's a great Torah scholar, and the Yetzer comes and says, "Doesn't that treif look really tasty?" He's going to say, "Are you joking? That's called the Yetzer. That's no challenge for me whatsoever. There's no way I'm eating the treif." But somebody who's on the lower level, he smells something good. It's not kosher. He says, "What's the big deal if I have a little bite?" So that's what he means. The Yetzer challenges the person based on their level. Shehu nefesh ba'amit sheba'adam. This is the animal soul that's within the person. B'pchinat hadam, and this is connected to the blood. Shetiv'a limshoch et ha'adam leta'avot va'avirot. What is the nature of the Yetzer? And the blood meaning passion, not intellect, not using your mind, is that it wants to draw a person to transgressions and to desires, to the unkosher desires. Ve'harov ro b'nei adam, and most people, hayetzara shelehem heim hadamim. It's their yetzara is from the blood. Ha'okrim shebegufo ba'atzmam. This is the thickness of the blood that's in their bodies. Hainu adam shebechalal hasmali. That is the blood that's in the left ventricle. I guess when we talk about the right and the left side, so the left side is where the evil thoughts or desires comes from. We talk about serving Hashem with both sides of your heart, the right side and the left side, the good side and the bad side. Shu b'tukvo, that is within its full force, b'chosko, v'ikar bin bulim shelehem beta'avot u'ba'averot hu me'akirat habin bulim hadamim. So why does a person make mistakes and do a transgression? It comes from the confusion that comes about from the thickness in the blood. Meaning that when it's easily, if you want to turn on the air conditioner, will that help you? Okay, you're just tired. You have a good excuse, sorry. You can sleep, don't worry. It won't offend me. I'm half sleeping myself. Why does somebody do a transgression? Because so he talks about the thickness of the blood, but really what he means is like the thickness of the thinking. That a person is not thinking clearly. Ube'emet mi sheyesh lo da'at tzach kol shehu, and somebody that has a clear awareness of Hashem's presence in whatever level that it is. Mi sheyesh lo da'at nikiya afilu ma'at, somebody that has a clear conscious and awareness of Hashem, even if it's just a little bit. Hayetzara hazeh ba me'akerot adamim. Their yetzara comes from the thickness of the blood, meaning confusing the clarity that they have in their head. Shia nefesh ba'amit shebe'adam, which is the animal soul that's within the person. Vu etzlo shtut gadon v'shigayon, and this is a bunch of big nonsense and makes the person crazy. Ve'ein tzarich shum itkabrut, and you don't need any effort lenatzeach oto, to overcome this yetzara. שבקלות יכול לשלוט ביצרו על ידי דעת צחה ונקייה. A person can overcome the Yetzer through a clear and clean awareness of Hashem's presence. So there's 3 footnotes here, we're going to go over them. The first one is that a person doesn't need any effort to overcome the Yetzer. And where is it? That's 13. 13. Ki tzarich itkabrut neged Yetzer. It's true that we do need to make an effort to overcome the Yetzer. Shehu malach. So he says that it's a malach. It's like an angel. It's like some force outside of us. Aval Yetzer hu aguf shel adam batzmo. But the truth is, the Yetzer is within the person themselves. B'zeh b'chira shkula ma'od v'keneged kon ra yesh tov. And so a person has free will. They get to choose, and in every situation there's good and there's bad. V'lo tzarich itkabrut kedei lenatzeach. And you don't need any in strengthening or inspiring yourself in order to overcome the Yetzer. Ela pashut lirtzot shelo la'asot et ha'avira. But the person would just has to have the desire to not want to do the transgression. Ukelashon Rabbeinu. And like Rabbi Nachman said in lesson Kuf Yud in Tinaina, V'zeh leshono, and this is what he said, Shemati she'ish echad sha'al oto. So this is Reb Nassan writing. I heard somebody ask Rabbi Nachman, Ketzad hu b'chira? What is free choice? Yeshiv lo b'pashtut. He answered him in the simplest way, She'ab'chira hi b'yad ha'adam b'pshitut. That choice is within a person's hand in the simplest way. Im rotzeh la'asot, if a person wants, they do it. V'im eino rotzeh, eino oseh. Then if a person doesn't want, they don't do it. That's free will. So if you ever get confused, what's free will? You do what you want, you don't do what you don't want, and that's free will. V'rashamti zot, and he said, I wrote this down. Ki u nitzrach ma'od. Here, Arya, give me the remote. We'll turn on the air conditioner. Maybe it'll also help me. I'm schwitzing a lot. Let's make sure they didn't put it on heat. I mean, the ladies here, they might put it on heat. You never know. Okay. Let's go. Air conditioner. Almost there. Okay. Be'ezrat Hashem. So he says, "V'hu nitzrach ma'od." This is very necessary. Ki kama b'nei adam nimuchin b'zeh ma'od, because there are many people that have really struggled with this. Mechimat shehem merugalim b'maasehem, because they're accustomed to the way that they do things. Ubederchehem b'noehem, and the way that they've done things from their youth. Ma'od. Basically, they think that they can't change. V'an kein nidme lehem she'en lehem b'chira chas v'shalom. And so it appears to them that they have no choice. God forbid. Need to turn the fan up here. There we go. Feels like, so somebody will say, I can't do whatever I can't not go to the mall for Shabbos. Wow, Mata Esther's got a recovery flight coming tomorrow. Bezat Hashem. Should be b'sha'ah tova. A person can say, I can't not go to the mall for Shabbos. I can't not play my instrument on Shabbos, or whatever transgression it is that a person feels that they can't do. And he says, everyone can change. And of course, that's the difference between us and animals. Animals, if a person is thirsty on Yom Kippur and you put water in front of their face, they won't drink it because they know it's Yom Kippur and they're fasting. But an animal that's thirsty on Yom Kippur, you put the water in front of their face and they'll drink it because they don't have free will. That's the basic definition of free will. And if a person says, I have no choice, I have to drink the water, you have a choice. If you really don't want to drink the water, you won't drink the water. Okay. So a person thinks that they don't have free will. They think that they can't change their ways. But it's not true. Everybody has a choice always over everything. And just like a person wants, they do. And understand this very well. Now we're on note 14. V'tziyen harav me cheren v'sichot haran. So I don't remember which rabbi this is, but it's mentioned Sichot Haran. And this is what he said. V'keneged hata'avot matridim et ha'adam. When a person wants to do a transgression, so the Yetzer comes and really nags a person. U'be'emet ein nimtza shum tava klal. But the truth is that there's no transgression, doesn't exist at all. That's Rabbi Nachman's language. Ein nimtza shum tava klal. Of course, there are transgressions and they do exist, but he says for you they don't exist. Ki achila u'shtiya u'echreach lekiyum haguf. If we say eating and drinking, so eating and drinking is necessary for the body to survive. V'gam banim muchachim le'olid, and also we have to have children. V'chol zeh ha'adam muchach, and all of this a person is required to do, meaning that meaning the children, you have to have something before you have the children, which was his intention. Meaning that you shouldn't feel that you have to eat treif, you shouldn't feel that you have to have illicit relations, because all these things, we have food and we have relations, we have all that. V'im ken ein shum tava klal, so there's no desire for a transgression at all. You just have to behave in the upright and kosher way. The person's intellect is able to withstand any desire. Because Hashem, it says in Daniel, Yahev chokhmata lechakimin. Yesh, I'm not going to translate the Aramaic because he has an explanation here. I guess everybody has a mind that can activate it when they need it. Ki yesh lekol echad chokhma b'koach. Everyone has wisdom in potential. Rach shetzichin lehotzia mikoach elapon. But we have to take it out from the potential into the actual. Ubezeh asechel levad sheyesh lekol echad b'koach chokhmato. And this is the common sense that everybody has with the power of their intellect. Dahainu, that is to say, ma sheyesh lo me'etzem briyuto. What a person has from the time that they were created. Milvad ma she'Hashem mosif, Hashem yitbarach, mosif letein chokhma lechakimin. So a person is born with the common sense, but then Hashem can add additional wisdom when the person needs it. Ubekoach chokhmato levad yechon gam kein la'amod keneged hata'avot. And with a person's intellectual understanding, they can overcome all transgressions. Just like if I mentioned that every time I pay VAT, the thought comes to me how easy it is to just change some numbers. I guess a confession time. But I never allow myself to do it. Also in the shuk, the same thing. When people give me more money, I'll give a 50 shekel bill and somebody will give me back 100. And I'll look at him, he's like, what, you gave me 200? So I said, no, I gave you 50, and I don't take people's money in that way. So that's what he's talking about, that if a person has the desire, they say, well, I want to take the money, but they say, nope, I can't do it because it's not right, then the thought will stop them from doing the transgression. And even a person that's already done transgressions in this world, and did whatever they did, and they've confused their knowledge and they've mixed themselves up, they made their wisdom smaller. Nonetheless, with a little bit of intellect, of common sense that's remaining with them, even that's enough for them to stick it out. And even just a little bit of common sense that a person holds on to can keep them from doing all the transgressions in the world. So now we're on note 15. So this was ubekalut yachol lishlot b'yetzara al yedei da'at tzachav v'nekiah. A person can easily overcome the Yetzer if they have a clear and clean awareness of Hashem. Kamo shekatuv Rabbeinu, as Rabbi Nachman wrote in Tנינא, Torah Chet, v'zeh lashono. Hamoach, and this is what he said. The mind, hu mechitza prusa bifnei ta'ava zo. It is a separation that's spread out between doing this transgression. So meaning that the transgression is here. Let's say somebody gives me a non-kosher cup of wine, and I know that it's not kosher, and I'm smelling it, and I never smelled wine like this in my life. What's a little sip? What's separating me? The animal soul would say, drink it now, drink it now. But the intellect says, no, how can you do that? You can't drink it. So he says, that's what the intellect is. That's what the mind is. The mind is this separation between the transgression and your free will. Ki ein adam over avira ela im ken nichnas bo ruach shtut. This is a well-known phrase that also is in Chabad Hasidus. A person does not, this is from Sota, a person does not transgress unless the spirit of folly enters into them. Meaning that if you were aware, I've given the example, if you were shoplifting and you're about to put something in your pocket and you see a policeman standing over you, watching you, you gently put that back in place. Because that's the awareness that he's talking about. So if a person says, I don't care if the policeman's there, I'm still going to stick it in my pocket, that's ruach shtut. That's really being stupid and nonsense. Avan kshamoach v'adat shalem. But when a person doesn't even think of doing something like shoplifting because their mind is clear and complete, umagen b'fnei atava hazot. It protects a person from this transgression. Hey, Noga.
Oh, here, there is warm, and here.
Yeah, I got to keep Ari awake, and me as well. You didn't save me any sushi. Hungry ladies.
Yes, because I came late and there was no sushi.
Hungry ladies. Kiyesh. I told her, just put it in the refrigerator. Take a whole plate, put it in the refrigerator. Okay. Kiyesh shlosha mochin. There are two types of intellect or mind. V'kol achad ve'achad u'b'chinat mechitza pusa mifnei zot ata'ava ad kan lashono. So, whatever, I guess chokhmah bin dat. They're the three intellectual levels that can prevent a person from doing a transgression, meaning that the mind can stop you from doing transgression. V'afilu ma shenechshav b'nei ha'amon nisayon gadol, and even something that's considered a huge temptation amongst the masses, kagon nisayon shel ta'avat ni'uf, like the transgression of illicit sexual relations, or specifically adultery, who etzlo shtut, for this person is nonsense. Ve'lo nechshav lo, it's not considered for that person the shum nisayon klal, as if it's any big deal at all. There's no way that a person would do that. I'll tell you something even more extreme that's disgusting, but I'll say it anyhow. Having sex with an animal. I don't think most normal people would be tempted to have sex with an animal. So they would say, it's a transgression, but that's something I would never do. So he says, if you have that level of consciousness, also for other things, you won't do it as well. Hainu, that is to say, hanisiyonot haba'im meitavot haguf va'akirat damim, the temptations and the tests that come because of the desires of the body and the thickness of the blood, meaning confusing thoughts. Ulam hu alu lavo nisayon gadon bazeh. It's true that a person might have this test. Al yedei malach, it's going to come about through an angel. So this is now note 17. Ki matzino etzem Yosef HaTzadik aya nechshav nisayon gadon ma'od. We find by Yosef the Tzaddik. So here we have somebody who has a great awareness of Hashem. But for Yosef the Tzaddik, it was a great test to not have sex with Madame Potiphar. V'chein bekama mekomot b'shas muva godel hanisayon beta'ava zo. And it's brought in several places in the Talmud how great of a challenge this was for Yosef. U'komo shehevenu le'ayel et ha'maaseh me Abaya. And also, like we mentioned before, the thing with Abaya, which I mentioned last week, that he saw a man and a woman walking in the morning, and he followed them at a distance, and they went their separate ways, and he said, I would never be able to do that. I would have ended up doing something I shouldn't be doing. And then he was upset at himself, thinking that this guy is on a higher spiritual level, until Eliyahu Navi came and said, no, the person that has a bigger Yetzer is on a higher spiritual level than somebody that has a smaller one. Okay, so it mentions that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Akiva, they had great temptations as well, and this came about through Al Yedei Malach. V'zeh gam nisayon shen Rav Amram Chasida Sham. Okay, I don't know the story of that. But what he's saying is that it's coming from this force that's there to tempt you. It's not just coming from inside of yourself. V'asiba she'ena nechshav nisayon. And the reason that it's not called a test or a temptation, k'mi sheyesh lo shum da'at v'yodea me'at megdulat Adonenu haborei yitbarach shemo. And if a person has just a tiny bit of da'at, and they have a little grasp of how great Hashem is, k'moshe katuv, as it's written in Tehillim, ki ani yadati ki gadol Hashem v'Adonenu mikol Elokim. Because I know how great Hashem is, and that Hashem is greater than all of the other gods, meaning that Hashem is the force of everything. Ve'i efshar lahaspir zeh, and you can't explain this, lo b'chtav v'lo b'bal peh, can't explain it not in writing and not verbally. Ki gedulat Hashem yitbarach, because the greatness of Hashem, ma shemitnotzetz lekol adam b'da'ato, whatever the little spark that a person has in their mind, hu rak lekol chad fum ma she. Okay, we'll read that in Hebrew. Lekol achad kefi ma she mishaer b'libo. Every person according to what they sense in their heart. K'moshe katuv b'Zohar, as written in the Zohar, Noda b'sharim ba'ala. She knows her husband who's in the gates of the city. She'akadosh Baruch Hu ba'ala shel Shechina. Hashem is the husband, as it were, of the Shechina. It's a strange way of saying it, but meaning that the Shechina is Hashem's presence in this world, and Hashem is the force behind the Shechina. Hashem is the ultimate level of the Shechina. Bianca Shon Alechem. V'hu noda lekol. Sorry. All right. And this is every person according to kol achad kefi masher mesher b'libo umitbonen b'gedulat v'romemot haborei yitbarach. So, what he's saying is that every person perceives Hashem in their own way. One person might see Hashem's greatness in one way, but for another person it doesn't work that way. They see it in another way. That's a lot of times my wife, I'm pointing because she was just here. Most of our disagreements are, I see things one way, she sees things another way. And we have a lot of intellectual disagreements like throughout the day. She'll say to me, what do you think of this? And I'll say, nah. And she'll say, what? What's wrong with you? So I'm sure if I asked her, how do you see the greatness of Hashem? It would be completely different for me. But I think ultimately we probably see it in the same way, just the details are different. Perush tevat be'she'arim. What is the meaning of the word at the gates of the city? Ki'ilu nichtav be'shi'urim. It's as if it's written in parts. Umisha zoche li'she'er b'libo gedulat Hashem yitbarach. And a person who merits to implant in their heart an awareness of the greatness of Hashem, bevadai etzem ze ha'adam eino nechshav shum devar lenisayon leumat atzivui shel Hashem yitbarach hagadol. So if a person is tempted to steal, and they know that Hashem said, don't steal, lo lignov, then even if they're tempted to steal, they won't steal because they know how important it is to keep the mitzvah. And so for them, that temptation is not actually a temptation. This is what a person merited to implant in their heart. Ve'ein tzarich shum itkabrut an zeh. So a person doesn't need any effort in order to come to Yetzer regarding this. Yetzer haba mechimat akirut hadamim. The Yetzer that comes about through confusion. Ve'od, and a little bit more, she'ata'anug haruchani hagadol shel yediat ha'elokut, the great spiritual pleasure that a person derives from knowing Hashem, mevatel kol ta'anug gashmi, nullifies any physical desire, ke'eino nechshav etzlo lemeuma, because it's not considered for that person to be any big deal whatsoever. Okay, that's where we're going to stop today. Can thank the Ayatollah Khamenei for a shorter lesson. And we'll have a little short story. So Reb Shmuel Munkis, you probably have heard of Reb Shmuel Munkis. He was chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe. See, I'm also exhausted. The Alter Rebbe. And Reb Shmuel is known as kind of a clown amongst Chabad circles, but he was actually a very serious chassid, and the chassidim knew to take him seriously. There's the famous story of him hanging upside down outside the Beit Midrash of the Alter Rebbe, and he said, just like you go to a barber or the butcher and they have a sign, you also need a sign of what the Beit Midrash is. You need a chassid hanging outside. So this was his way, and he was. And it's funny. I found this on Chabad.org. Boy, they gave like the whole transmission of who told this and who told this and how we got the story. I'll just take their word for it. Okay, so in the city of Sklov, there was Rabbi Pinchas Reitzis, if I'm saying his name right, and he was also one of the close chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. And he was blessed with wealth and Torah at the same time, which is, the wealth, Torah, and health at the same time, that's about as good as it gets. I guess healthy children as well. And we should all be blessed with that, B'ezrat Hashem, and blessed with it, b'kalut, in an easy way, and not to forget the gifts that Hashem gives to us. So he was also the rabbi of Sklov, who himself was a great scholar, and he was also one of the chozrim of the Alter Rebbe. So we know what a chozer means, that the Alter Rebbe, or even at the time of the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, would speak on Shabbos or Yom Tov, and there would be several people with photographic memories that afterwards would get together and each would write down word for word what they remembered from the Rebbe, and then they would take their transcripts and combine them into one and present it to the Rebbe, and that's how we have the sichas from Yom Tov and Shabbos. And then also these people would go around and give over word for word what the Rebbe taught, because there weren't books like we have today. There wasn't like mass printing like this, so you needed people that went around. And I'm also assuming that learning from a person that was like speaking, you probably learned more than you would from an actual book. So he was like, on this exalted level. And one day, Reb Shmuel Munkis is traveling through Sklov, and he goes to his friend's house, Reb Pinchas, and it's, this big fancy mansion, and Reb Pinchas and his wife are not there. So the servant lets Reb Shmuel in. He says, I'm a friend of Pinchas. He lets him in, and he takes him room by room and shows him all the fancy rooms and all the fancy furniture. And at some point he says, okay, I'm just going to wait for my friend to show up. And he lays down on this very fancy couch with embroidery and all this stuff, with his boots still with mud on them, sitting over the edge of the couch. And he fell asleep because he was tired from all the walking. And at some point, Reb Pinchas and his wife walk in the house, and his wife sees this dirty, not so respectful looking chassid laying on her very fancy couch with his dirty boots. And she says to her husband, "What is this?" And he says, "Shmuel, what are you doing?" And Shmuel wakes up and he says, "Shmuel, really, you have to have a little bit of derech eretz, You want to come into my house, it's no problem. You want to sleep on my couch, no problem. But you really need to take off your shoes before you make the couch dirty." So he says, I can see this is something you've experienced. So he says, if that's the case, so this is Shmuel, he says, if that's the case, I'm out of here. And he gets up and starts storming out of the house. And Reb Pinchas says, wait, Shmuel, where are you going? He says, you're more concerned about mud on the couch than the mud in your brain? You're so concerned about material goods when you're a chassid? How can you behave like that? Why do you care if my shoes are on the couch? And Reb Pinchas, he wasn't a stuck-up, wealthy person, a rabbi. He got it right away. And Shmuel said to him, I'm only going to forgive you if you take a broomstick and you ride it like a kid would ride a horse through the marketplace. Right now. Otherwise, I'm out of here. So right away, he takes the broomstick, sticks it between his legs, and starts jumping out of the house and runs through the marketplace and comes back. Because he knew that Shmuel wasn't playing games with him. Shmuel came there to teach him a lesson, that all of that wealth and all of that kavod, all of the honor that he received as being the rabbi and the rabbi's son and the chozer and all of that, can easily go to your head. So sometimes you need a Reb Shmuel to come and lay down on your couch and embarrass you a little bit. But what was the greatness of Reb Pinchas was that he didn't ask any questions. He simply took the broomstick and did what Reb Shmuel told him. And that's the trick. So when we're all wealthy and we all have big mansions, we have to, we hope to have friends like Reb Shmuel that will come and say, you need to put the broomstick between your legs and jump around the shuk. Okay, shkoach everyone. Continue again next week.